Greetings all and welcome to Spooky or Nah. Today, we're looking at something a little bit different. We're heading over to Reddit. We're going to look at some final last words things because I've seen these things before and they're pretty creepy. Like ages ago I read articles and stuff about like final last words and I thought it'd make an interesting video, so here we are. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, doctors and nurses of Reddit. What was the creepiest last words you ever heard from a patient right before they died? This one's from Baby Bop. Not a doctor, but I overheard an old lady whisper this to her old husband dying of kidney problems. You are going to beat this. You got away with murder. This is nothing. Interesting. Actually, this second comment's interesting too. Got away with murder is often used as a metaphor for pulled off some dodgy or risky stuff. Or, you know, he killed someone. Which is true. I mean, it could mean, well, basically what they said, because, as I said, you got away with murder. I mean, you know, you say that about your siblings when they, like, do something and they blame you, and it's like, man, they got away with murder. But, you know, it could also literally mean that he got away with murder. Don't know. It's interesting, because you never really hear about the people that actually get away with murder. I mean, I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's true. We only ever hear about, you know, like, Forensic Files and all these other shows about people who get caught, but you often wonder how many people actually get away with murder, like how many murderers are just out there who've killed someone and just no one will ever know. Okay, moving on. But I don't know how to get there. Grandpa in hospice, hadn't spoken in days, died about 2 hours later. But I don't know how to get there. I suppose the instant inclination for your mind to travel to would be heaven or the afterlife, but I don't know how to get there. I suppose it's one of those things, because when you're dying, I mean, you know, your brain could sort of be in different levels of consciousness and activity and inactivity as well. So it could be memories from, you know, the past, in your life, things that you've said, things that you've done. Sometimes they can just come out, you know, those memories sort of poke their head through and then you kind of just say something. But, you know, again, I guess we won't actually ever know what what he meant by that, because unfortunately he's passed away. But yeah, moving on, let's find another one. I work in a cardiac ICU. We had a patient who had a pulmonary artery rupture, a rare but known complication of Swan-Ganz catheter. I think that's how you pronounce it. 1 minute he was joking around with us, and the next, bright red blood was spewing out of his mouth. His last words before he died were, "Why is this happening to me?" It still haunts me years later. That would haunt you. That's creepy. That's not so much supernatural or spooky or anything. That's obviously terribly sad. But yeah, that would haunt me too, because, you know, you especially as like nurses, doctors, you're trying to save people's lives, and especially when it goes from joking around and then the next thing, you know, he's unfortunately dying. That would be incredibly tough. And, you know, I personally could never be a doctor or nurse or anything like that. I mean, the things you'd see and stuff like that, you have to be a pretty strong person to do that. So I'm an RT and had a vented track patient in angio, have the same thing happen. Vent waveforms got a little funky, showing she needed suction. I walked up to her and saw bright red blood just starting to shoot up the vent circuit and immediately obstruct it. Immediately said she's hemorrhaging, and the vascular surgeon said no, it's just a little blood, thinking I was referring to his access site in her groin. I popped her off the vent and blood just started pouring out of her track, mouth and nose. She looked at me and said, "Just let me die." Oh yeah, the rest is a bit graphic, but yeah, that again is another one that is not so much spooky, supernatural, or anything like that. Another one that's just obviously really hard on the you know, and doctors and nurses and stuff. And unfortunately, I can imagine that stuff would happen all the time. And yeah, pretty sad to read. Okay, this is a bit of a scary one. I've seen this one before. This is from Lolaxter. I was a hospice nurse for many years. Super gratifying job for a nurse, surprisingly. As a, quote, regular, unquote, nurse, you were rarely offered thanks. Hospice nursing is an island into itself, mostly peaceful, lots of times sad, often a blessing. This is sad but also creepy, and I wouldn't believe it if I hadn't seen it. Had a 20-year-old kid, gang member, who was dying of primary liver cancer. Super unusual, aggressive and terminal. He was angry at the universe, his family was there to comfort him, but he literally spit in their faces. Oh wow. Every ounce of energy he had left was angry and mean and ugly. His mum would beg him to lighten up and accept Jesus into his heart. He would swing at her and tell her to F herself. The family remained beside in hopes he would chill out at the end. His last days, hours, moments, he was angry. The family called me into the room and told me they thought he was going. Bracket, he wasn't responding. Shine Stokes breaths, eyes glossy and skin cold. The end was imminent. Bracket. His lovely mother, in her dearest attempt, whispered to him to go towards the light, to her Jesus. With his dying breath, he opened his eyes, looked at her and said, F your Jesus. A second or two later, he slowly turned his head to the left and got the most horrific look on his face, as if he was looking at something we couldn't see, and horrified, like in a bad movie, his face contorted and he screamed with his last breath, eyes wide, oh shice, oh no, exclamation mark, so screaming. Then made a guttural noise and promptly fell back into the bed and died. Every family member was shaking and too frightened to speak, and I left the room and took 2 days off. I don't care if I never find out what he saw. Whoa, got some chills reading that one, honestly. See, that's creepy. Like, that is creepy. Whether that's supernatural or not, that's still pretty creepy. You've got to picture yourself standing around that bed and that happening right after the mum is saying, like, accept Jesus into your heart, go into the light, you know. And then all of a sudden he turns to the left, sees something no one else can see. I mean, in that moment, that's going to look pretty creepy. That's going to be pretty scary. And I've got to admit, I would be pretty freaked out too. I mean, I don't think it matters if you believe in God or ghosts or whatever, if you're an atheist. I think none of it really matters, because I think when you've got something like this, that's just terrifying. Like, that is a really creepy thing to happen. You know, and death is obviously a powerful thing, and it moves a lot of people, and it's pretty heavy. And then throw something like that in the mix, it makes for a pretty terrifying scenario. So, okay, this one's from Something Witty. My grandpa died in 1989. My grandfather, Bob, died around 1965. She never remarried, never dated, but she did have a great life. When she was dying, she yelled, Bob, Bob, here I come. Oh, honey, I've missed you so much. We always joked that we were glad she didn't yell, Bob, who the hell is that? That last part, that was pretty cute. But yeah, it's interesting, because like I said earlier on, it could be like a whole memory thing, you know, like it could be something like your memories are flowing back. You know how they say, like, your life flashes before your eyes? She could have just been reminiscing. She could have been religious, so, you know, she could have thought that, you know, maybe that was a sign that, you know, her husband Bob was waiting for her on the other side. And, you know, I think we'd all like to think that that's true, that there's something after death and that we can see our loved ones again, but in this life we're never going to know. And yeah. Okay, this one's from Liz9. I had a cousin that had cancer and died when he was a little kid. He once asked her mother why all these people visited, and she said, because your cousins, aunts and uncles love you very much and want you to get better. And he answered, I'm not talking about them, I'm talking about the ones that visit me at night. Wow. Okay, that is, that's pretty scary. Creepy. These are the ones that I read and I'm like, it's freaky, you know? Like, it could be so many different things, and it could, sure, I mean, it's absolutely possible that, you know, ghosts or spirits or entities, stuff like that, are like actually visiting, but freaky. Here's actually a pretty good point, which is kind of what I was trying to say about that last one. This is from And Now Human Music. I have a pretty rational explanation for this. I've been hospitalized several times in my life, and the nurses and techs come in at all hours to check your vitals and take blood and who knows what else. Which is true. It's pretty terrible. You're woken up every couple of hours during the night when all you want to do is rest because you're sick in the hospital. And I suppose when you're sick and you're confused and you're on the brink of death as well, unfortunately, you know, you can be in all kinds of stages of sort of physical well-being as well as mental well-being too. And you know, sure that the cousin could have very well have been talking about the nurses and doctors that are visiting them, because you know, when you're half asleep, especially while you know, when you're close to death as well, you know, you could perhaps confuse you know, doctors and nurses with, you know, potentially something else. Maybe they weren't confusing it with something else. Maybe they were just saying the ones that visit me at night, you know. But okay guys, well, that's it for that one. I hope you enjoyed the video. I always love reading these things. I hope to bring you more videos to do with all this stuff. I mean, there are some great stories out there, whether true or not. I mean, they're still very interesting. There's a lot of things out there that you can dive into, that you can try and wrap your head around. Most of the time you can't. I mean, reading these, it's difficult to really understand what these people were thinking, what they were feeling before death, and but some pretty scary, some sad, unfortunately. But yeah, if you guys like this video, make sure you share it, like it, hit that subscribe button and a little bell notification so you can find out when I'm posting my next video. But until then, keep it spooky.
Can you feel it?